Hey everyone, today on the Hobby Grotto we're going back to metallics with red, featuring Horus Heresy Thousand Sons. The first thing we have to do is build up the metallic base, and generally when I do coloured metallics I use a pure silver base, but I'm actually starting with a gold this time around, and I'll get into why I'm doing that in a bit. But this is an overbrush, which is a heavy dry brush where you want to be getting a lot of coverage over the whole model for a nice base coat. There's still going to be some black from the undercoat in the deeper shading, but generally you want a good consistent coat of metallic here, and we're going to get that with an overbrush rather than a regular dry brush. Also, don't be afraid to do two coats, that can save you from needing to be too heavy-handed on the first pass. Before I go any further, I'm going to apply some Nuln oil to strengthen the shading, and also because this is the Hobby Grotto, we've got to have some Nuln oil in there. When you overbrush a model, you can lose some of that detail, so this is going to bring it all back, and once that's dry, we're going to brighten up the metallic further. Here we have a 50-50 mix of gold and silver, and I'm giving the whole model a good dry brush with this to start buffing up that metal. Even though we're developing into more of a bright silver now, the gold that forms the base will add a nice subtle warmth to the red we're going to be applying later on. I find that when you use a pure silver base, it can sometimes make the red look a little bit pink, so I like the gold here developing into a silver, and that just helps with the overall tone, but we still have the silver there to keep that bright metallic under the red. If you are going with a straight silver base though, it's all going to work the same way, and you might find this actually works better for some of the other colours you may need to paint with a mini. Just experiment with different styles and see what works best for you. The last dry brush I'm doing here is pure Runefang steel, and I'm giving the whole model a light dry brush here to pick out the detail and edges, but I'm also coming back and focusing this dry brush on the upper areas of the model to create a zenithal style base but with metallics. Having a bright silver like this will help the detail stand out with the red glaze, and by focusing it on the upper areas of the mini, we're going to get more shine under the red in the areas that matter. Now this part is optional because the end result is very subtle, but I do like to come back with the brush and add some pure silver highlights to key parts of the model. The red contrast we're using on this mini is very saturated, so these highlights will help give that underlayer of metallic shine a bit more punch. But again, if you're painting lots of miniatures, feel free to give this part a miss. It can take quite a bit of time, and it's very easy to get carried away with fairly minimal gain overall. Once the metallic base coat is complete, it's time to apply the red glaze with some Flesh Tearers contrast paint, and you can use any red speed paint or contrast paint for this. It's all going to depend on what kind of tone you want in your red. The important thing is that all these kinds of paints have varying degrees of pigment density and saturation, so you may need to dilute them a bit with medium if they're too strong. I'm using this contrast paint straight so you can see how it looks, and also because it's just easier, but by mixing it with medium, you see it gets a lot more transparent and makes the red more subtle and less saturated. So this is another one of those things that's going to come down to your personal choice of what kind of red you want. If you want to cut it with 25% medium or 50% medium, you can just make a batch of this in another bottle so you have that consistent look across a variety of models. I'm putting this on fairly heavy, so it's important to make sure you're moving any pooling around before it dries to get this coat nice and even, and it actually takes a bit of practice, so I definitely recommend painting a test mini first if you want to paint a bunch of minis in this scheme, using contrast paint or speed paint. Just because of the nature of this speed painting style, you're always going to have a bit of pooling. You just want to make sure it's not anywhere too obvious. And only move the paint around when you're first applying it. Once it's started to dry, you need to stay away from it, otherwise you're going to make it look very messy with brush strokes and it's going to tear the paint as it dries. You also don't have to cover the whole model with this, and can in fact leave some areas in the bare metallic, something quite useful for Chaos Marine armor trim and weapons. It's going to depend on the model, but again, I'm just doing the whole thing for ease and so you can see how the metallic looks on various surfaces. The metallic red has got a nice shine to it, but we need to sort out the other details on the mini, and I'm giving all these areas a base coat of very dark grey. From this point onwards, you want to be extra careful with your painting because you don't want to get any stray paint on the metallic bits. It's going to be a little bit of a pain to fix, but you can fix it. You just have to repaint the area silver and carefully add some contrast paint back over the metallic patch with a small brush. But if you're careful, you won't have to worry about that too much. Some silver details will create a nice contrast with the red, and I'm just applying a very standard silver in Ironbreaker here, which I'm going to follow up with some Nuln oil on both the metallic silver bits, as well as the grey under armour and piping to finish it off. I really love these Heresy era Marines, and I have a bunch of them, so let me know in the comments what other legions and chapters you'd like to see appear on the channel. There are so many cool colour schemes, it's seriously hard to decide. To get these eyes nice and bright, I'm laying down a base coat of white and then applying the Moot green over the top. Mixing in some yellow or white with the green for a final highlight will really make them pop and create a nice contrast against the red, but you can paint these eyes any colour on your own Marines. This guy also has a plasma pistol, so I'd better show you quickly how I painted that. From the base of Baharroth blue, I'm just mixing in various levels of white over multiple layers to build up the brightness of the plasma. You can do this over the whole coil, or just concentrate it on specific areas. Just remember to keep the paint thin, because it requires quite a few layers to get a nice blend going. And there we have a fast and easy way to paint metallic red. Thanks for watching. Why don't you check out some of these other videos, and we'll see you next time on the Hobby Grotto.